Today we have our usual celebration of the extraordinary rite of the Mass, which, as we all know by now, is very different from the usual manner of celebrating or participating in the celebration of the Eucharist. The extraordinary rite, therefore, is something from our past traditions, which we have been allowed to once again use regularly, side by side, what is now known as the new order of the Mass, or the Novus Ordo. And given also the difference in the structures of the celebration, it is understandable that even the readings are different. If you had attended today the Novus Ordo, the standard Mass of today, you would be listening to the gospel narrative of Jesus saying that we are supposed to take up his yoke, for his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And so just for us to be tuned with the rest of the community that is at Mass today and attending the Novus Ordo, very quickly allow me to say something about the readings from the Novus Ordo first. Then we move to the readings from the traditional rite or the extraordinary rite. It's not a question anymore that we have burdens to carry. So Jesus acknowledges that in the Gospel of St. Matthew. But what the Gospel is inviting us to reflect on is the question, to whom are we yoked to? To whom are we bearing the burden for? To whom or to what? The second reading of the Novus Ordo would identify two sources of this. One is the burden of the flesh or the world, and the other one is the burden of the Spirit. The burden of the flesh will be everything that is associated with our temporal life. And by that, we also mean that it is passing and transitory. And sometimes we ask ourselves, for all the trouble that we're taking to do these things, to acquire these things, to be here, to be with this person, is it really worth it at the end of our lives? For instance, ancient commentary of this reading tells us this very practical wisdom. We worry a lot that we want to acquire certain things. After we possess it, we worry again when we lose these things. If ever we lose these things, not if ever we lose these things, but that we lose these things. As an example of that, and please don't tell him when you see him next week, you know Lance, our altar server from the high school seminary. He knows that I have been acquiring things for the celebration of the Latin Mass. I've been buying old books online, and he knows all about this. And then last Friday, just before the Mass at the seminary, he finally had the nerve to tell me, he said, "Father, when I become a priest and you're already dead, can you please pass all this to me?" And St. Augustine beautifully puts it also that ships, they go through storms to transport things of business. They go through storms to transport things of business. And the question therefore is, what about the burden of the Spirit? What storms are we willing to go through for that? And the burden of the Spirit will be the Spirit of Jesus that allows us to renounce evil and to pursue what is good, to renounce hatred and to pursue love. And on this note, we jump to the readings from the extraordinary rite. The readings from the extraordinary rite is still from the Gospel of St. Matthew, and if you can read it from the translations provided, it talks about Jesus' warning to be careful about how we treat each other, especially with regards disrespecting others, calling them names, calling them fools, or in the ancient language of Scripture, calling them raka. And then it talks also about if we remember something that our brother has against us when we are participating at the worship of God, we are supposed to discontinue and make amends with the brother. From these 2 points, we gain the following insights. Number one, St. Augustine, reflecting on this, said, this kind of teaching is intended, as it is introduced in the text of the Gospel, to allow us to arrive at a certain kind of goodness that surpasses the goodness of scribes and Pharisees. St. Augustine looks at this as a metaphor. The scribes and the Pharisees are not just the scribes and the Pharisees of the Jewish religion, their version of the priests and ministers of their temple, what the priest is to us in our Catholic Church. They are not just that. We also know that their lifestyle is such that these scribes and Pharisees often teach but do not do what they taught themselves, what they have taught themselves. They're good with words, but they cannot be relied upon when it comes to action. So if St. Augustine tells us, or Jesus according to St. Augustine tells us, to allow our holiness, our goodness to surpass the scribes and that of the scribes and the Pharisees, then we must go beyond mere lip service. Mere saying yes to all this but not really doing it, and not really struggling and putting up a fight to be able to fulfill the Lord's injunction to us on a day-to-day basis. And two areas are of crucial importance in today's Gospel reading. One, how do we treat each other in terms of words? Because words can betray a lot of things regarding how we think about the other. The controversial word being used in the Gospel is raka. The ancient commentators of the Scriptures are at a loss as to how to translate it. In English now, it simply means you fool. But in an older version of the translation, dating back to the time of people like St. Jerome, the Bible translator, from the ancient languages to Latin, he said, raka really is an empty word. It doesn't mean anything. It's like the Spanish song, the ketchup song, no? Asereje. It doesn't mean anything, but it sounds nice. So raka also seems to sound like a normal word, but St. Jerome said it is not. It means empty. Therefore, when you call somebody raka, it is short of saying that blanco man ka, kay klaro, hanap man ka. And why is this offensive? Because according to St. Augustine, in every one of us, no matter what state in life we are in, what economic positions we have in society, once we are baptized, we have been gifted with the presence of God in us. Therefore, to call somebody empty-headed is to deny the presence of God in a person, and therefore it is considered disrespectful. Because Christianity will have us look at each other as bearers of Christ, as under Christ, and therefore we honor and worship each other in the same manner that we worship Christ, with love and respect. The second item, very quickly, because I know you have to go to lunch, is regarding the injunction that when we are at Mass, for instance, and we remember not what we have against the other, but what the other may be having against us, meaning if we are the offender, not the offended, we're supposed to stop at what we're doing and reconcile. Now, St. Augustine is very level-headed. He said, it cannot be that you get out of Mass and look for this person. Because if he is far at sea, when can you come back to finish the Mass? He said, first and foremost, in your heart, you must make amends by asking God forgiveness for a wrong you have done. That way you are reminding yourself that you have an obligation to rectify. And if you are the one being wrong, and you are the one who upholds the person to wrong you, you get twice the blessing that the Lord promises for those who reconcile with their brothers and declare the offender. These are small suggestions to our everyday conduct with one another, but this speaks a lot in terms of the depth of our willingness to become disciples of Jesus.